And the Netherlands have rocked the supposedly fancied South Africans. They have beaten them comprehensively in something we did not see coming. The last time Netherlands won a game in the World Cup was in 2007. They have never beaten a test-playing nation before, and South Africa have never lost to a non-test nation before. That's the magnitude of what we've seen today. Welcome to the Shiny Side review of Netherlands versus South Africa. With us today, we have Shariq Tariq. Shariq is an avid sports fan, played league cricket for 5 years in Texas and Arkansas, and follows any sport you can think of, basically. Hi, Shariq. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Good to be here.
And how are you enjoying the World Cup so far?
Well, I didn't have very high expectations to start with, but as the World Cup ramps up, I'm getting into the World Cup.
We haven't had enough close games, but I think the couple of upsets have helped to kind of make it more interesting.
Right. Yeah.
I
think the only off is the Pakistan versus Sri Lanka game.
True. I mean, yeah, exactly, right. Which is otherwise most games are pretty much decided with 10, 15 hours to go. So before we get into it, I will quickly do the 33-second summary of the show, of the game, which we normally start the show with. And I'm just setting my stopwatch here. So today, South Africa won the toss, chose to chase, and they left Shamsi out. They brought in an extra pacer, probably because they thought it would be overcast and it would help them. And they seem to be doing quite well. They had Netherlands at 140 for 7. From there, they somehow recovered to score 243. A lot of hitting in the end. South Africa could only gave about 100 plus runs in the last 10 overs, only got 1 wicket, which completely changed the game. This was a very short game, of course, so it was 43 overs. And once South Africa came into bat, they were 36 for naught. From there, they became 48 for 4. Klaasen and Miller had a bit of a partnership, 50-odd runs, but once Klaasen went, there was just a constant follow wickets, no real partnership. And then the inevitable happened. South Africa were 207 all out. And they lost by 47 runs. So, yeah, that was 47 seconds, so I went over slightly. But yeah, I mean, I'm not even sure where to start, Shariq. What's your initial reaction to today's game?
So the decision to bowl was a good one in light of the overcast conditions and the fact that they had picked another pacer, which I thought was a good decision because, Netherlands being the minnows, it was a good time to experiment to see what Coetzee had. Coetzee is a good bowler. Quite impressed by him. They all did really well. We were raving about how the South African attack was so good, even without Nortia in it, and then suddenly, the Dutch just turned the game around in the last 10 overs, which was anticipated. But even after the score, which I thought was a stiff score, I expected Netherlands to actually chase that target down fairly easily because I don't think their bowling is that good. It's decent, but it's not good enough to stop a team like South Africa. Expected them to win with 5 to 7 overs to spare, but
I guess if you just go back to
of South Africa choking and Netherlands, I'm very shocked.
I think if you just go back to the South African bowling to start with, right? So, I think South Africa started well, like we said. They had them at pretty much at 140 for 7. But it seems like maybe the South Africa kind of didn't attack enough. I think Rabada, who seemed to do well in his first spell, which ended in over 16, didn't come back till after the 30th over. So maybe South Africa could have been a bit more attacking in the middle and got some more wickets there. But yeah, Netherlands were basically all over them. And South Africa really, couldn't really, I guess, finish things off. And the way the Netherlands were hitting in the end was just unbelievable. I mean, 243 in a 43-over game is almost a run a ball, right? So it's not the kind of score where you can kind of coast along to. You need to keep up with the run rate.
Definitely. And then when and it had shades of England versus Afghanistan. It was expected to be an easy chase for both England and
South Africa.
South Africa, but they just picking wickets, and in the end, it was Miller, like Harry Brook. He was just playing
Yeah,
plowing the lone furrow, and I'm just very surprised. But
yeah.
this throws the World Cup wide open.
Completely. And to be honest, I've been saying this for a while on the show almost every day. Whenever someone mentions South Africa, very fancied. And my view always is I think they're likely to crumble at some point. Also because the batting order ends abruptly at 7. So they have guys, top 6 are decent. Janssen averages 30 in ODIs with the bat. But there's nothing after that with the bat. And that's what happened today. So if you can get early wickets, they do look vulnerable for sure. And I think this is also the first time someone took them on in this World Cup. So far, they've been on top from the beginning in both their games. This is the first time someone took them on, and they couldn't really handle that.
And this happens to be the first time they batted second. I'm wondering if that plays a factor.
I guess the other thing also is that
Yeah.
So both South Africa and England, I think part of the reason for chasing in these games was probably because they wanted to optimize for NRR also, right? So do you think if you want to optimize for that, you can hopefully you think you can bowl out a weaker team for a lesser score, go hard, finish it off with a lot of overs to spare and get an NRR boost. But clearly, I think at this point teams need to be optimizing for win the game and then go for NRR rather than start making decisions for NRR first up. I think, which I think is a bit of a problem here.
Well, at this point for South Africa, I think more than NRR, which theirs is pretty good. I think they need to make sure that they win the games. So you don't have to come down to this at the end.
Yeah, true. And I guess now South Africa. So I think before we move on, I'm going to quickly just pull up the games that are coming up for South Africa next and see what else they have in store. So they now are sitting on 2 wins out of 3 games. They're ahead of Pakistan on run rate, not on points anymore. But their next game, which is coming up against England this weekend at the Wankhede, it's going to pop up on your screen in a minute. But they're playing England and Mumbai on the weekend, and they play Bangladesh and Mumbai after that. And those games suddenly are becoming super important now, right? Because if South Africa go down to Bangladesh, to England, they will be basically England and South Africa will both be sitting on two wins out of 2 games, and so the so-called good start South Africa had will be lost. So I think a lot to play for South Africa now all of a sudden. And this England game on Saturday becomes really big for them.
Absolutely. This was a game they were expected to win, and they didn't. So they're back again on the back. We've often seen South Africa crumble towards the end of a tournament. So perhaps this shock at the beginning of the tournament will kind of allow them to recover.
Yeah,
I think that's good.
I started with this, right? But South Africa in the T20 World Cup last year. So by the way, yesterday in our show, we previewed this game as the grudge match, the one South Africa would want to win because of what happened last year in the T20 World Cup, but they had to win it to qualify and they lost that game. And that's about allowed us to go into the semi-final as Pakistan. So interesting times. But I guess moving on to tomorrow's game. So, I mean, what looked like a relatively, I would say, not the biggest clashes coming up, but who knows in this World Cup now. We have New Zealand taking on Afghanistan in Chennai. Now, before we get into what New Zealand would want to do, if Afghanistan could pick one venue in India to play New Zealand, it would be Chennai, because it's probably the most spin-friendly track in India. What do you make of that clash, Shah Shariq?
So I think Afghan spinners, they're the best. I think they have the best spin attack in white ball cricket. I think their spin attack is better than India. I find Mujib to be far more dangerous than Rashid, who I think is probably the best white ball spinner in the game. And as Chennai wicket, it aids spin, so that's going to play a role. But I think the real key here is how the Afghan pace attack does. That's their weak link. Although they have shown some signs of life, but I think the Afghan pace attack and the absence of Kane Williamson, who's probably one of the best players in the world, that's going to play a role. So I think, and that kind of holds the key. The other thing is, I don't know if you've noticed this, but I think Afghans struggle against left arm pace, and I think Bolt being one of the best in the world, that could also play a role. So I
Yeah.
think uh, Afghanistan has a chance, but I think in the end, how this upset, quote unquote, upset to take place.
Yeah, I think, I mean, you just feel like New Zealand seems to be a bit smarter than the kind who would succumb to that, right? But the kind of week we've been having, who knows what we see tomorrow. Uh,
Right.
I'm quickly going to pull up the expected 11 for New Zealand. And I, again, feel sorry for Kane Williamson, right, who just came back from injury, but had a freak accident and his fractured his thumb again, and he's out for a few more games. So I think he'll probably bring Will Young in, and Jimmy Neesham will keep sitting out, Tim Southee will keep sitting out, and the spinner Ishodi will keep sitting out. So it looks like a pretty comprehensive lineup. I don't see any reason why they would make a change. Because Santner, obviously, the Afghanis like the spin, but I think New Zealand would want him to keep Santner in. He's been having a great World Cup. He's a top wicket taker at the moment, along with the others. So, what's your prediction for tomorrow's game, Shariq? I'm assuming it's in New Zealand.
I'm gonna be on New Zealand's side, but
Yeah,
maybe it's 60-40 New Zealand.
yeah. Okay, good stuff. Before we wrap up, we have this small section towards the end of the show, which is a quiz, which
Yes.
interestingly is more interesting based on the results we've had, even though I came up with the question earlier. So the question
Yes.
is, Netherlands beat South Africa in the T20 World Cup in 2022 to knock them out of the tournament and enable Pakistan to qualify. What was the margin of victory? There's five choices on your screen.
I'm gonna say 26.
Interesting answer. The answer is 13.
Wow.
So, when
Wow.
I looked it up, my impression was it was a much more comprehensive win. I didn't realize it was that close. 13 means they're literally 2 shots away from the result being something else. But
That's right. Do you
that was my
remember how
memory.
many they had to spare South Africa when they were?
I mean, they were bowled. I think they were bowled out. So I'm not sure. I think it was the last over or something like that. I think they made it till the last over. Yeah. But
Yeah.
good stuff, Shariq. Thank you for being on the show.
Thank you for having me.
It was a pleasure having you here. And if you like the content we're making, please like the video, subscribe to our channel. And we'll be back tomorrow after the game in Chennai between New Zealand and Afghanistan. And in the meantime, stay tuned to the shiny side.